Today we'll be looking at how to get from this to something like this. I will show you exactly when we get back. Alright guys, before we continue with this video, unfortunately I lost a lot of the filmed clips for this edition, so I'm going to be doing voiceover over a few photos to kind of fill in what I have lost. So bear with me guys, this video still is going to be informative on how we got to this scratch build. So when I get back, we'll show you the materials we use for the actual building of the scratch build. So the bridge style I decided to scratch build and model is the modern steel composite beam girder bridge with a concrete deck on top. As you can see in these images, the beam is a thick steel outer wall with I-beam reinforcement skeleton inside and buttresses, and the top are concrete poured plates with rebar in them. That's basically the design I went for here for a prototype. Alright guys, for the actual structure of the scratch build bridge, I used the following styrene. I acquired some discarded 3/16 of an inch styrene signs many years ago. They had a vinyl front for the signage that I peeled off. I used this for the superstructure, the ribbing, the deck of the deck girder bridge. That's that one styrene. I used Evergreen Products 168, which is a 4.8 millimeter thick strip, measuring 0.80 by 1/88 of an inch, and those were stacked too high for the side walls of the deck girder. For the cladding of the actual main beam, I used product 9015 0.4 millimeter thick regular flat evergreen styrene sheets, and then to do the outer wrap for stronger rigidity, I used the 2040 V-Groove 0.5 millimeter sheet styrene. I used the V-Groove because it folds really well along the lines. And I used Testors liquid plastic cement to put everything together. That basically melts the plastic together. Your typical plastic model kit glue. And then I used Gorilla Super Glue Gel formula for the stronger bonds. So when we get back to this video, we'll go through the steps of me building this. For the superstructure of the beam, I used the 3/16 sign sheet styrene. I cut two pieces, 1 by 12 by 2 inches, and 4 little squares measuring 1 by 1 1/8 inches squares. I then proceeded to make 1/8 marks inwards of the 1 by 1 by 1/8 squares, so I can taper cut them to a nice taper like you see here. That's how the beam looks in prototype. I proceeded to put the two long strips together with the new wedges to make a trough-like structure here, 2 on the ends and 2 in the middle, equally spaced about 4 inches apart roughly. So you see this superstructure skeleton here. Then I proceeded to wrap the superstructure of the 3/16 styrene with the flat and V-groove styrene to sandwich it all together. I completely wrapped it on all 4 sides. As you can see here, the weights are holding it down while it is gluing in place. So once everything's sanded and wrapped, you get a nice beam. That's going to be the base of the bridge. I also pre-sanded it with 60 grit sandpaper for the primer to hold after. Now we're going to be working on the deck, and then we're going to be fusing these two together after. So the concrete deck is quite simple. I just used the 3mm styrene again that I had from an old sign, and then for the sides I used 4 of these evergreen styrene strips, and I just basically sandwiched everything together with model glue. That gives it a nice side profile for when the tracks go in and then the ballast. And now it's just putting these two pieces together, gluing them, having it set, and then using the primer to paint it. So here's the composite beam concrete deck bridge all together. Next is going to be some sanding work and then primer ready for paint. Alright guys, as far as the abutments are going to be constructed, I'm making them out of 1/2 inch extruded foam insulation. I cut the blocks down. Next I'm going to take the profile of the composite beam bridge and trace out the troughs, make them a bit wider in order for me to cut them out properly. Then I'm gonna paint them concrete after I cut the size down properly after trial and error fit. I'm gonna paint them concrete and then seal them and maybe do some graffiti or weathering effects to them. Alright guys, so here are my finished construction of the abutments. I decided to do a composite construction of the 1/2 inch foam insulation board with the 1/8 thick sheet styrene I had for the size, just to make it easy and have it more rigid. So the way I did this is I super glued the styrene to the styrofoam with gel super glue. Super glue does act like a solvent, so it does melt the foam a little bit, as you can see here, which will be covered by paint. But then I proceeded to reinforce the back seams with a hot glue gun. So now test fitting to make sure the bridge fits, and then after that painting and weathering for the abutments. So the actual painting of my scratch build bridge, I primered everything with Duplicolor self-etching automotive primer. It comes in this kind of oxidization, light olive kind of army green color that I actually really like, so I left that color for the beam. Then I painted the concrete deck girder with different layers of gray paint and titanium white. Everything then was secured with Krylon low odor clear matte medium, and then once that dried, I basically used acrylic paint markers for the hand painted graffiti, and then once that dried, again the matte medium. For the weathering streaks, I just used powders. These are by Doc O'Brien. I have a 12 color starter set from Micromark, and that's what I used for the dirt and rust streaking on the abutments and where the bridge water spouts are, so the ballast doesn't overflow during thunderstorms. Alright, so I primered. This is how it turned out. I actually like this color. I'm going to leave the bottom beam this color. They paint them anywhere from just using the red oxide, anti-oxide primer paint. They sometimes use green. They basically color these bridges any color, ranging from matte to gloss. I like this color very much, so I'm going to leave that. And I already put dull coat over the bottom. I'm going to tape it off, and then I'm going to be painting the top section a concrete color. So we'll be back with that. So I mixed my paint with some white acrylic paint and some natural gray to kind of get this kind of color, and I'm going to be dry brushing a little bit of white to kind of dull it more after the fact. And I taped off my lower section because this bottom section is going to be concrete as well, and I'm going to be using a sponge to applicate the paint to make it more seamless, no brush strokes, made it almost look like spray paint. So I'll show you how it's going to look like after. So there's the first coat of the concrete color. Let that zoom in. Then I'm gonna do a dry brush application of just white to dull this down even more, make it look more like concrete. But yeah, I think that's gonna look nice with the green on the bottom and then just concrete on top. Gonna reveal this how it's gonna look like the deck after it's painted. So the bridge is painted, guys. Just wanted to bring it on the layout for some better light. So you have the oxidized green beam and the concrete deck. Came out quite nice. I also did weathering powders before my last clear coat seal to represent dirt and dust collecting from the drainage streaks. A lot of these modern concrete bridges have holes cut out in the deck with drain grates to let the water drain, to prevent the ballast from overflowing from the bridge and washing out on train bridges, and from cars to hydroplane on regular road bridges. So that's what I did here. Minor weathering just of dust accumulating, some rust when the wind hits the side of the bridge when it's draining. But yeah, so that's the completed bridge. All the graffiti work is done with paint markers and a fine tipped black Sharpie for some of the fine edges. I took the images from the internet. Once I hand draw these on, I did a protective coat of Krylon matte median. Then I proceeded to do another layer of fine powders for the water runoff from the bridge onto the abutments, as you can see. And then I finally did a whole liberal coating of matte medium to finish it all off. And this is the finished product you see.